bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons here with the HockeyWriters.com, as always with Colton Pankiw. Colton, how you doing, buddy?
Not too bad, Jim. Feeling a little under the weather here, so I'll call it my flu game, but overall I'm not doing too bad.
Well, you'll have the Phoebe Buffet friends,
Exactly.
nasal congestion, sissiness going on there. We're doing a late one tonight because right as we record this, we're about to watch the Oilers and the Arizona Coyotes. For whatever reason, that one's starting at about 9 p.m. Mountain time or whatever, which means that anybody who wants to watch it on the East Coast and watch McDavid is going to be up to like 1:30 in the morning catching this game. So we're doing the show right before the Arizona game. So before we get right into this, let's make a quick prediction, which we're all going to look either really smart or really foolish by the time people watch this. What do you think is going to happen with the Oilers game against Arizona tonight?
The Coyotes have been playing quite a bit better hockey lately, but that said, the Oilers are playing quite well too. Their offense is rolling, so I'll say a 5-2 win for the Oilers.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be as wide a gap. I keep making these predictions against teams that they should be kind of handily defeating, and they're coming out and having to pull out like some sort of magic at the end of a game, like against San Jose, and we'll talk about that one in a second. Just the fact that they should never have been that close, like for Darnell Nurse to be the one that has to win it at overtime should not have happened. They've lost to Columbus twice. Like these are teams that they should easily be beating. When you look at them on paper, I do think the Oilers will win this game. I think it's important that they win this game, but I'm going to say it's closer than it should be. I'm going to go 4-3. I think there'll be some scoring here. I don't believe that Coyotes defense is going to be able to do much to stop the Oilers. So it'll be an interesting game for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the San Jose game. What did you make of just the game? Was unbelievable. Like everything that you could have possibly imagined in that game happened in that game, right? We got a bunch of goals that were scored and then a bunch of goals that were scored that didn't count. We had an overtime win for the Oilers. We had comebacks and all sorts of, it was a crazy game. What did you make of that game?
First, like you said, it was exciting. It was a little frustrating off the bat, just because, like you said, sometimes these bad teams, they kind of tend to play down to their competition at times, and I think that was kind of the case in this one. Through the first, at least in the first period, even the first two, I thought they were a little flat, and then that third period in overtime were two of the most exciting periods that they've really played all season, or at least in some time. Overall, I thought again they showed great resiliency. Like they always show that they have a ton of talent and are able to come back and win these games. But again, like you don't like to see them trailing. I think they're down by one goal 3 different times. So that part's a bit frustrating, but I think there was some different elements that came into that. And overall, it was a good sign to see like they got back into the game without McDavid or Draisaitl scoring any goals. So I think that's a good sign moving forward.
Yeah, it was an interesting one because they played really well in terms of like their offense and stuff. It was just a bunch of brain farts that cost them. San Jose was able to capitalize on stuff. Erik Karlsson walked in, got some, like they just sort of like lost their mind for a few seconds at a time and San Jose capitalized on it. Does that concern you though? I mean, like the Oilers are scoring. Evan Bouchard and Mattias Ekholm, and we'll talk about Ekholm in a minute, have been fantastic. Their numbers are pretty good considering how many times the Oilers get scored on. But everybody else seems to sort of like have these moments when they just sort of lapse and forget that they should be playing 200-foot hockey. And these teams that aren't necessarily known for scoring a bunch of goals have scored some goals in the Edmonton Oilers. How concerning is that heading into the playoffs? Like if you're playing a team like Vegas, who scores a lot, and Los Angeles, who's rolling, that's going to be troubling, I think, if you can't figure out a way to limit some of those, like play a 200-foot game, play smart back checking. Like I thought a couple of those goals were just Oiler forwards not coming back and play in their position and San Jose people being wide open. Are you worried about that at all?
Yeah, it feels like we've talked about it for years with this team where they have the talent and everything, but for some reason they just at times seem to lack urgency. And I think like we've seen at times when they've kind of done that all season in an attempt to bring it into the playoffs, how it's impossible to just change it with the snap of a finger. It's something like it's habits that have to be worked in. So you've seen it in the bubble. They ended up getting upset by the Blackhawks. And then the next year, I believe, is when they got swept by the Jets. So they were able to figure that out last year. And it seemed like, however, when Woodcroft got hired last year was kind of when that switch flipped. So by the time the playoffs came around, they were already on it. They didn't have to adjust right then. So it's kind of concerning to me that it's still happening this late in the season. Like you don't want to have to wait for the playoffs in order to play your top game. But with that said, like you said, there were some brain farts, but I do think, again, just having a goaltender in there that just has really no confidence right now made that game a bit tighter than I think it would have been if Skinner was in. And it's not fair to blame it all on Campbell, obviously, and he was still able to get the win. But I think just there's some of those saves in there that you're expecting that you're just not getting when he plays right now. So I think that played a big part in it as well.
Well, that's one of the things I find so interesting is that the Oilers did not play a more solid, all the way back in their own zone, kind of come together and play defense in front of Campbell, the guy that they know they're probably going to have to play that way against or with in net, because he hasn't shown, outside of a small stretch of 8 or 9 games where he's been pretty solid, that you can rely on him to make the give-in save, right? So if you're going to cheat, you cheat with Stuart Skinner in net, even though that's probably not what you should do. You don't cheat with Jack Campbell in net, and that's what they did. And they got caught a bunch of times. Let's talk about Campbell and his performance. Like, does this game, because he let in 7 goals, only 4 of which actually counted because there were so many goals, I think 3 for San Jose and 1 for the Oilers that were called back. Are we at a point now where we're like, that's it? Like, you can't run this guy. Like, yeah, you'll do it in your back-to-backs just so that you can give Skinner the rest that he's going to need to not overplay him. But do you play Campbell anymore, like, than you absolutely have to? Is that where we're at now?
Yeah, no, I think so. It's just his body language is just even like he just doesn't scream confidence at all. It's kind of to the point where anytime a guy comes down and takes a shot, no matter where it's from, you're cringing a bit, worrying that it can go in. Like, again, that last game against the Sharks, we were talking about Hurdle scored on the first shot on net. It obviously didn't count, but then right after another shot where he kicks out a pretty bad rebound, it goes in, and it's just, you can just see it. He just sinks right after. And he kind of, I don't know if it's just a style thing he's always done or if it is a bit of confidence, but it just seems like he plays so small in the net at times. And then it doesn't help that he's got a bit of an unorthodox style too. So when he's not playing well, you really kind of notice that compared to a guy like Skinner, who's so calm and controlled in the crease. So it's just, it's not going well right now. And as far as guys playing better in front of him or tighter, I do think that maybe having the goalie that you don't have as much confidence in, you tend to grip the sticks a little tighter. And even though it may look a little lackadaisical, I think it's just guys maybe trying to be a little more perfect out there and worried that the goaltender they have in net isn't able to bail them out like one, and Skinner has shown he's able to time and time again this year. So I think having Skinner back there actually increases the confidence a bit and kind of helps them just able to play their game a little bit more.
Yeah, that could be a good point, because there were a couple goals where I didn't blame necessarily Campbell for them. He was screened like crazy. There was one I remember specifically where Evan Bouchard was like right in his face, right? And it could be, you're right, that it could be just the Oilers feeling as though they need to collapse and be there to block shots or get in the way or whatever. And what's winding up happening is that they're getting into the way to the point that Campbell can't see anything, and he's not going to be able to make that save if he has no idea there's a shot even coming at him. So it's kind of a, tit for tat. It's a win-lose, what are you going to do situation, right? Where you're kind of like, you want to help your guy out, but by helping him out, you're getting in his way and you're eliminating the opportunity that he might be able to make that basic save. But then again, maybe you're worried he's not going to make the basic save, which is all the more reason, I suppose, that you just sort of go, look, we can't play him unless we have to play him. And it's going to be really interesting. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about Mattias Ekholm. He had a fantastic game on the other night against San Jose. He's played really, really well since he's come over to the Oilers. He seems happy to be here. He says all the right things. He's fit right in. He's already bossing people around, and not in a negative way, but like, this is, you go here and I'll go here and we'll do this thing. Like, he's fit like a glove. And then he scored 2 goals, huge goals in this San Jose game. He's been so good. This might be biased, and we'll get it. We talk about the Oilers, but was there a better deadline trade than Mattias Ekholm?
it's hard to think of one right now. I know Dmitry Orlov in Boston, I haven't seen the last little bit. I know when he first got there, he'd been very good as well, but I don't think there's any that have been better. Like he's looked incredible. And I think even for myself at the time, I was kind of hoping for Chikrin, and that's completely gone. I knew Ekholm was a good defenseman. I didn't realize he was this good. And like I'd kind of talked about it last week, how I think the offense was always a bit underrated in Nashville with Yossi in front of him, and he's completely showing that. I mean, like you said, 2 goals last game. I think he has 8 or 9 points already. So he's been fantastic. And what I keep noticing too is just how much he seems to elevate the play of pretty much everyone else on the ice with him. Like Bouchard's game, I found since he's got there has just looked so much more composed at 5-on-5. And there still is obviously the odd turnover here and there, but overall, I think he just looks a lot more confident than he did before Ekholm got here.
Well, I mean, they've become the number one pairing, haven't they? Yeah. Ekholm and Bouchard have sort of elevated above Nurse and CC. Bouchard played 26 minutes and changed the other night. He's on the ice today for an optional practice in Arizona. Like you're right. He has just taken the next step. And I don't think he takes that step without Ekholm coming to this team, much like he didn't take the step the other year until Duncan Keith came over from Chicago and they put those two together. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is what happens when you put a really solid veteran defenseman with experience and a calming presence with a guy like Bouchard, who has all the skill in the world, but doesn't always know where to go with somebody who's not really sure what to do either. Ekholm always knows what to do. Like there's just no situation where he feels like he doesn't know what play to make. And because of that, I think you calm Evan Bouchard down a lot, and he's really elevated his game. Would you do you think the factor that they've added Ekholm and he's here for the 3 years, like I know some people are like, oh my gosh, that's such a hefty price to pay. He's a little bit older. He's going to slow down. Like I look at this as going, man, you traded for or you mentioned Orlov in Boston. I thought that was a great deadline deal. I thought it was a huge pickup for Boston, but I don't think he's staying. Like I think that's a rental. I think he's going to shop the market and he's probably going to go where the price is the best. And I'm not sure that Boston's going to be able to keep him. Ekholm's here. He's going to be here for 3 more years. Do we look at this now the way that Ekholm has played and said, man, is it not a nice thing that he's going to be here for a few more seasons, when maybe at first we were kind of thinking, that's a lot of money for a guy who's going to be here for a little while?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the one scary thing about that pickup at the time was and I think he's 32 and he's got 3 additional seasons after. So you're going, yeah, like that's quite a bit of term for a guy of that age. But then again, I think we had both kind of harped on it that, you don't know how much longer McDavid, Draisaitl are potentially going to be here. So worry about the later years later. And that with him right now doesn't even seem like it's going to be a problem. Just the way he plays, he doesn't seem like a guy that maybe would get slowed down by age as much as some other players in the league. And so I think that's a big part of it too. But yeah, right now he's been everything is advertised and more. I mean, even just that second goal he had last game, first, I don't know if I've ever seen someone take a slap shot from the bottom of the circles like that, but just that shot in entirely was incredible. I didn't know that he kind of had that shot in him. So there's so many things that I'm learning about his game that just continues to impress me more and more.
Well, yeah, he had one slap shot earlier where he scored a goal in a few games ago, but not from that close. Like he walked right in and still had the confidence to take that shot, a slap shot, and he just labeled the corner with it. Like that shows the ultimate confidence for a guy who's just feeling it right now, right? So that's a really good sign for the Oilers going in. They just need for Darnell Nurse and CC to sort of calm down a little bit. If CC could figure out how to get some of that back that he had last year when he was so solid, the Oilers might not have like an elite top tier defenseman. Maybe Bouchard becomes that later, but right now they don't really have it. Nurse might be the closest thing with the skill level he has and the speed and the ability to play 1 million minutes. But having 4 solid defensemen is a pretty good option to have.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk I wanted to get your take on some of these comments that we saw today. So I'm just going to pull it up here because there was McDavid is talking before the game in Arizona, and the World Baseball Classic is just finished, and there was all sorts of good press about it. Now there's some negative stuff too that comes with professional players playing outside of their league if there's an injury, and we saw it where the Mets closer is out for the season now, things like that. So there's a little bit of that you always have to worry about when you get into athletes playing in other leagues and doing other things. But McDavid was asked about the WBC, and he was like, yeah, it's great. Like if you saw the matchup with Ohtani and you saw Trout and how cool that was and how much attention it drew to baseball in general. And then he comes out and he says, the NHL, I'm paraphrasing in not so many words, but he's like, the NHL is screwing this up. Like, this is a situation where we should be playing best on best. We've wanted this for over a decade. He's never played with Sidney Crosby on the same team, on the Canadian team, which was just, it's robbing fans. It's robbing him and Crosby of the opportunity to play together. But he was not shy about saying that, which I don't know, a couple seasons ago, we would have heard anything coming out of Connor McDavid in that respect. What did you get the feeling that you had when you're like, oh man, like, were you surprised by those comments? Were you thinking, no, it's about time? I'm not shocked at all. What did you think of when you heard that?
A little bit surprised, just because McDavid especially has been a guy, and lots of those kind of top tier guys, even Crosby, guys like that, generally don't give the media much. They kind of they're pretty well trained media wise, and kind of just give the generic, almost quote unquote boring answers. But I think it's a good thing that he did, and I think it'd be a good thing if he continues to until something happens, because all hockey fans, players in the league, want to see a best on best. And it's frustrating that it hasn't happened. Like you said, not being able to see McDavid and Crosby together to this point is it's robbing fans, it's robbing them of that opportunity. And it's not like Crosby's getting any younger. I think he's 34, 35 now. So you don't have too many more opportunities at this. And it doesn't have to come in the Olympics like you just seen in the Spaceball. Like, it can be another World Cup of hockey type of thing. Like, they can do different things in order to make it work. And the players want it to happen. So they're going to be accommodating to do kind of whatever it takes to get there. I mean, you've seen in the Olympics this last time when they were talking about going and all the crazy testing, and still almost all the guys were wanting to go. Like, that's how bad they're wanting to do this best on best. So I get it from like an owner's perspective, or even the odd fan out there who says you're getting hurt not playing for your team. Obviously, if that does happen, it's unfortunate, but to me, it's a risk you got to take to see some of the most exciting hockey out there. Like, at times it can be, especially if you're a Canadian fan and maybe you haven't seen your team make a deep playoff run or anything, seeing them play in that gold medal kind of makes up for that. And it's just super exciting stuff. So I think they, like McDavid said, they have to find a way to make something happen here.
Well, and when you look at the parity in the NHL and you're talking about the different players and which countries they come from, if you look at like the top 10 scorers in the league right now, I think they come from 6 different countries. Yeah. Like, it's pretty crazy when you think about how spread out the game actually is. Like, it used to be that all the best players came from Canada, so Canada would have been stacked. It's not like that anymore. It's absolutely guaranteed that a lot of these countries would have stacked teams just as stacked as Canada's. So it wouldn't just be like an all-star game where the greats are playing and it's like 7-0. It would be competitive hockey with the best players in the world getting to play with and against each other in something that really, really matters to them. What do you make overall of the idea that Connor McDavid just in general is becoming more outspoken? We heard Jay Woodcroft did an interview on 32 Thoughts where they sat down with him exclusively, and he talked about, examples of Connor McDavid, becoming a leader and growing into that role and really taking it on. And they asked for an example, and he said, and it wasn't in a negative way that he said it, but he was talking about McDavid and his willingness to give people garbage crap in the locker room. Like, if they weren't playing up to the standard that they thought they should be setting as an Oiler, he told them. Like, he was coming out and he was saying, this is not acceptable, blah, blah, blah. He didn't specifically say the things that Connor McDavid was saying to the other players, and it didn't sound at all like there was negative or there was any sort of pushback. It was just all positive that McDavid has become so vocal in the locker room. It seems like McDavid is becoming a lot more vocal in general. Is that a good thing?
For sure. I think you hear about always like some of the best leaders in sports, whether basketball, like you heard maybe Kobe Bryant, or in hockey, you always hear like Mark Messier, and they don't always say things that guys want to hear. They're not always, just like easygoing, but they push their teammates, and there's a reason they're the best players. They strive to be the best, and they expect everyone else around them to put in that same effort that they are displaying on a daily basis. And I'd heard a different interview with Woodcroft just, I think, prior to maybe the Sharks game, where they asked him about McDavid's leadership, and he was just saying that he's a good leader, but he also just does it by example. He's always the guy out on the ice working on his craft constantly. And so he expects to see that from other guys. And I think that's good that maybe early in his career, I think it was Brad Marchand a while ago saying that he thinks sometimes teams give the guys a captaincy too early in the NHL. And, that could have very well been the case with the Oilers and McDavid. I think he was only 19 at the time. So it's asking a lot to kind of boss around guys that can be 10, 15 years older than you. But now that he's kind of established himself more in the league, is getting older, like it really, I think, kind of shows on and off the ice. And I think it probably played a good part in why the Oilers were able to have more success in the playoffs last year as well, because he's getting more comfortable in that role.
Yeah, and I think he probably understands the rules of other people on the team too. Like there's always the risk, I suppose, and maybe not risk is the right word, but when you give a player as talented as Connor McDavid the role of trying to get other people to play up to his level, and those people cannot do it. Like they just cannot do it. It's the same thing like when Wayne Gretzky was a head coach. He just, the knock on him was he just couldn't understand why players couldn't do what he was telling them to do. But nobody was Gretzky. Nobody could do what Wayne Gretzky did. So he was he wasn't a greatest coach because he just couldn't wrap his head around the fact that people can't do this stuff. And there's just a lot of people that can't do what McDavid would do. But now that he's older, now that he's understanding how the league works and how his teammates work and how he works within, the synergy of that whole group, he probably has a much better read on what he can say, what he shouldn't say, what he can, harp on them for, and what he should hold back. And just an understanding of, it's like, look, I can't tell this person to do that because they're not going to be able to do that. Right. And he's never going to be like, I'm McDavid, I'm the only one who can do it. But the reality is that's probably true. Right. So he's got to be able to pick and choose. And I think now that he's a little older and he's understanding the league better and how the games work and even how the referees are calling plays on them and what they can get away with and what they can't, I think he's just more mature. I think he's figured it out. And now he's not afraid to let people know what he thinks, and that his voice does really matter and it carries a lot of weight. You're right. He could do a million things on the ice and lead by example that way. But I think that Oilers locker room has become a much a healthier place for people to sort of stand up and lead and show their way, which we saw last year in the playoffs. That leads me to a question about someone like a Nick Bjugstad, who's got experience, who comes in with depth. There's a lot of depth on this team now. We look at the bottom six of the Oilers, and they're pretty solid. Like in some cases, they're top 9 players playing a really pivotal role. Bjugstad's been a pretty good addition from the trade deadline. A lot of people didn't know if he was going to be that guy, if he was just a depth piece or whatever. They're pretty good player. What have you thought so far of his addition?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of looking at him on the Coyotes like a team that just doesn't have a ton of talent this year. And then not so much the past few seasons before, but earlier in his career in Florida, he put up some okay, like secondary scoring numbers. So I was kind of still wondering if he maybe had that in him. And I mean, I know it's early, but he's got, I believe, 3 goals already during his time here. So that's been a pretty nice bonus. And I think overall, just a really good addition to this team, kind of almost a depth piece, I guess, but a guy that can play up and down the lineup a bit. And I harped on it either last show or a few ago, but like you just notice his size. He's got so much reach, and so that makes him big on the penalty kill. And then obviously he's been pretty good on draws too. So I think as far as, and especially the price they paid to get him, like that's a very good depth pickup at the deadline by Holland.
Yeah, no, he's been good. He's been solid. Like it doesn't always work out. And I can point to a whole bunch of deadline trades this season where you look at these players and like, man, it has not gone well. Like the experiment hasn't worked, and maybe they'll click, maybe they won't. But you get a lot of that every year. You had a deadline like Oilers added Athanasiou, nothing, right? They've added other players, nothing, right? But in this case, they've added 2 players who have been really solid additions. Both have kicked in. Even last year, Brett Kulak was a really solid addition, and he helped. Evander Kane has come back kind of like this year when he did last year, and he's been really solid so far. So that'll lead me into my last question before we close the show here. I'm trying to look at the schedule just to figure out what we've got left. What do we got? Like 10 games left?
10 or 11, yeah.
Yes.
11.
So it looks like, what do we got? We got Arizona on Wednesday, Vegas, Arizona, Vegas, LA, Anaheim, and a lot of those Pacific Division teams. So what kind of record do you think the Oilers are going to have here down the stretch? They're playing teams where the points really matter against competition and teams that they can elevate and jump in the standings if they win those games. Some teams that they should be beating: Anaheim, San Jose again, Arizona. They should be winning these games. What kind of record do you think the Oilers are looking at here over the stretch in these final games as the season closes?
We're the only 2, if you have it right in front of you, we're the only 2 playoff teams they play, LA and Vegas.
They've got, Arizona tonight, Vegas, Arizona, Vegas. So Vegas, the Kings, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, Colorado's the second to the last game.
Yeah, I say that they'll probably win 8-ish of those, and I know that's a fairly tall ask, I guess, but I think just they've been playing so well lately, and that's assuming that they're able to beat the teams that they should be beating, right? Like the Arizonas tonight, a couple of the other ones you'd said there, like the Sharks, I think you'd maybe said again. but a few of those teams that they should be putting up points against. And then I think that they'll be able to take at least one against Vegas and probably even against the Kings too, because I still think that they do believe they have a shot, if not at first in the division, at least at second to gain home ice in case they do match up against LA again, which at this point at least looks pretty probable.
Who would you rather see them? I think they're going to have a good run here. I think if they can stay healthy and figure out, just how to sort of close her down a little bit, limit those goals by 1 or 2 a game. They're scoring a ton. They're going to continue to score a ton. It's just trying to keep it to 3 or under. That's the real key here for them. So I think they're going to have a solid finish. Who would you rather play though? If it's looking like it might be Vegas or Los Angeles, who would you rather play?
So LA scares me. And I think in saying that, like if I was a fan of any other team in the division, I would say the least team I'd want to play is the Oilers. But I think LA, they gave them a good run for their money last year, and they've gotten a lot better. Like they added Fiala in the offseason. Some of their young guys, like they have a really talented team and some really good young players that they're going to be good for quite a while here. They have Doughty back. So I think, and then they got Korpisalo in net now too, who is an upgrade, I think, over what Jonathan Quick had been at least here in this season. Obviously, Quick was very good in the playoffs last year for them, but LA's a tricky team, I think, to beat. I think ideally you'd probably rather Vegas, and obviously they can be really good too. They might have Mark Stone back. Logan Thompson just came back, but I think LA's the trickier of the two.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like so far, Vegas has shocked me. I did not think that they would be as good as they are, but they just keep winning. And sometimes they're blowing teams away. Like they're scoring a ton of goals. And really like to just keep rolling, right? Like the gap's pretty small now. I think it's 4 points between Edmonton and LA and 6 points between Edmonton and Vegas. So it's not out of the question that they could get there. But these teams, LA and Vegas, both keep winning, right? So as much as the Oilers are having a fantastic record, LA and Las Vegas is having a great record too. So I don't know if there'll be much ground gained here, but I'm with you. I think the LA series might be more entertaining, but I think it might be a tougher out. I just wonder if these two teams match up so well that it could be very even. It can go either way. Yeah, it'll be a shame if one of those two teams has to get eliminated, but yeah, it'll be a fun one to roll that back. Are you sad that Calgary doesn't look like they're going to be in it?
It was fun last year, obviously, when those two met up, especially kind of living in Calgary for it. It was definitely interesting. But yeah, I mean, if you can't come out and beat, or not even beat, but just put out the effort that they put out against the Kings the other night in that 6-1 game. I mean, I know they were just able to win again last night against the Ducks to kind of keep them in it, but like you said, it's not looking good right now.
Yeah, no, they're struggling. I don't know what changes they're going to make, but it looks like they're going to have to do something because the relationship between those players and Daryl Sutter, I don't think is a very healthy one. So
doesn't look good. Yeah.
No, it does not at all. All right, Colton. Well, we'll leave it there for now. We're going to go watch the Oilers game. We're about 5 minutes to puck drop, maybe more like 15 by the time the NHL actually gets this game underway. We'll see if our predictions come true. What'd you say again? I said 4-3 and you said what, 5-2?
5-2. Yeah.
Yeah, 5-2. Well, we'll see if either one of us are right. Hopefully we're both right that the Oilers actually do pull this one out and get 2 more points. Colton, thank you very much. For everybody else watching this has been another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. Check out all the other videos on the YouTube channel. Check out all the articles on the hockeywriters.com. Both Colton and I have a ton of stuff coming out here right now. Even though the trade deadline is over, we're busy as ever writing like crazy. So enjoy the game, everybody, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of THW Oilers Overtime.